So our guest speaker for today is Aijia Waithe. So she's a registered psychotherapist qualifying who is passionate about helping individuals commit to change. Having worked in the performing arts industry for over 15 years, life led to a series of experiences that allowed her to learn, travel, and use her creative skills, but realized that this full-time pursuit was affecting her mental health. And due to the consistent demands of being present for audiences, traveling away from community, and being immersed in a highly competitive industry where representation of BIPOC people was less common, posed its many challenges. So after observing the state of her own mental health and recognizing that she was called to a greater capacity than performance and finding value in the one-to-one interactions with those she met along her journey, she further developed the passion for encouraging others beneath the surface. And today, Aijia runs her private practice, Hummingbird Psychotherapy, and enjoys supporting individuals as they journey towards healing, self-discovery, growth, and true change. So Aijia is excited to speak to the EFeMS community and intends to provide a combination of psychoeducation, practical tools, and to facilitate a safe space for all women attending to leave feeling seen, heard, and empowered. So everyone, please help me welcome our EFeMS Masterclass speaker, Aijia Waithe.
Thank you so much, Nana and Dr. Anna, for beautiful introduction and for the opportunity to be here today. Everybody who is here today, I believe, is meant to be here. It is an honor and privilege to be before all of you individuals, all of you ladies who are probably amazing, excellent, and, great at your crafts, respectively. However, I find that as educated Black women, strong educated Black women, we often focus so much on our careers. We focus so much on our professional development, our academics, and we sometimes, in the midst of that, forget to cater to ourselves personally, our mental health especially. So this is why I wanted to talk to you guys today. So just saying thank you for that. Before I get started, I do want to say a disclaimer, okay? So this topic can be taboo for some people, especially in our community as Black people, Black women at that. So I want to disclaim that this is meant to be a safe space. What does that mean? That means that if we have any form of discussion or anybody asks questions towards the end, there is no such thing as a silly question. There's no such thing as you should know that. Why are you asking that question? We want to encourage and empower each other, right? Support each other. And even if somebody asks a question, you may learn something that you didn't realize or be open and exposed to a different perspective. So I just ask that you all be a little bit more open and just be open to learning today. So I'm going to share my screen and we can get right into it. So let's see here. Okay, so when it comes to mental health, this is geared towards the strong, educated, and Black woman. So for all of you guys, in one word, what I want to start with is I want this to be interactive, is what comes to mind, one word, when you hear the term mental health? Can you type it in the chat? Sanity. Thank you, Miriam. Peace. Emotions, wholeness. The state of your mind. Yep. Wellness. Yep. Yep. Anyone else? Yeah. For me, I would say healing. That comes to mind. Just staying whole and healed. Okay, so we're gonna get into it. So this is all gonna connect as we go along. But when we look at these four women, you may know some of them, you may not. What comes to mind now, be open to unmuting yourselves. You can talk. Um, what do you assume about their mental health state? That's the question. Is there any assumptions that anyone has when you see their pictures? Most of them are smiling and they're beautiful. Does anyone want to unmute? Oh, you're in the chat. Unapologetically, yeah, freeing. They look happy and content with life. Yes. So I'm going to share that one of these women actually took their own life last year. And it's one of them that are smiling. So the one that took her life was this lady, Miss USA. You may have heard this, you may not. But the point is, she was an attorney, she was a model, she was a philanthropist, she was a strong, educated Black woman. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this at the beginning here is a lot of us are so good at putting on the mask. We're so good at performing, and we're so good at just keeping it all, trying to hold it all together for ourselves and also for the people around us. But sometimes we really don't have it all together inside. So this presentation, this talk, is meant to provide you insight, as Nana said, so you can learn what you may not have known, and also reflect about where you may be at mentally today, okay? So, what is mental health? So based on the World Health Organization, mental health is determined by a complex interplay of individual, social, and structural stresses and vulnerabilities. And mental health is also has intrinsic and instrumental value and is integral to our well-being. So a few people said well-being. So a lot of things contribute to mental health. Mental health is not just, for people who are sick. Mental health is our health with our minds, our thoughts, our feelings, the things that we kind of ruminate on. But we have some common stigmas, especially in our Black communities, right? So tending to mental health, is not only for individuals who are sick, or for people who are weak, or only for people who don't pray. Mental health, tending to your mental health is not only for people who have a formally diagnosed mental health condition, which, by the way, Black women statistics show that we often go underdiagnosed. We often don't seek help. We are half as likely compared to white women to seek support for many different reasons that we're going to get into. And tending to your mental health, it does not have to just be done one way, right? You don't only have to go to a therapist to tend to your mental health. And lastly, tending to it is not only about self-care. This is one aspect. Self-care has so many different forms, which we'll also discuss, but mental health can be in the relationships that you choose to connect with, right? The communities that you engulf yourself in, and the time that you spend to reflect and experience gratitude for the things that you are experiencing in life, which we sometimes forget to do. But why is mental health so taboo? Why is it a topic that we don't like to talk about? And I'm sure there's somebody on this call that feels uncomfortable with this topic today, and that's okay. It's normal. It's something that we have to work through together. So amongst Black communities and the African diaspora, it's taboo because of colonialism, firstly. So for generations, for decades, we've been conditioned to believe that our thoughts, feelings, cultures, and traditions were not acceptable, that they weren't valuable or humane even at that. So we've normalized a sense of mental oppression. We've normalized, oh, well, life happens, so it is what it is. But no, we have to deal with these things. So colonialism, we don't even realize that's what it is half the time. Secondly, intergenerational trauma. We've probably heard this term, it's buzzing around social media nowadays. But what is it? So intergenerational trauma can come in so many forms. It can come in how we parent. It can come in how we respond to individuals. So for many, being strong, that term strong, is living life in survival mode. What does that mean? So survival mode means we kind of just do what we got to do to get things done. but we don't actually deal with the fundamental foundational issues that we may have gone through, or take the time to really accept or not be in denial of them. So we often subconsciously learn behaviors and unhealthy perspectives that are based on fear or unprocessed traumas due to us feeling the need to survive or fit in to our communities. And then cultural beliefs is another reason why mental health is so taboo, right? We choose to believe that what we see or what we were taught is the only way and the right thing. So, and I want to be culturally sensitive. We are all in different parts of the world on this call. However, I think at this stage in life, especially with the careers you guys are aspiring to have, it is important to ask yourself, do I believe this part about mental health because that's just what my community tells me it is? Or is it something that you believe because you've done your research and you really understand it, right? I think it's okay to ask yourself these things, especially as we grow into ourselves, right? So we're taught that questioning or considering anything outside of the norm would be seen as disrespectful, right? Foolish or unacceptable. And the truth is, the reason we do that is because we desire connection and community. We don't want to go against the grain or challenge our elders or challenge even our peers, because we don't want to be seen as the other. And then the last thing is, in our desire to connect, the stereotypes, in our desire to connect in community, we often do not want to feel othered or fear rejection. So we avoid tough conversations. We avoid conversations that may have others see us a different way, or, be concerned for where we're at. So what I want to show is a video clip that is explaining a little bit more of some of what I've just said. And then I want to have a conversation. I would love if you guys would participate in that, not kind of conversation, but just briefly ask you if you've identified with any of these 4 reasons. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen for the video. One moment. It's just a very brief clip, but I think it might bring some insight to you guys. Okay.
Despite stolen lands and stolen bodies and stolen culture, despite laws and psychology and science skewed and used with white supremacy in order to justify the inhumane treatment, Black people have mastered survival. Surviving and living and loving and worshiping and being so damn beautiful. But I wonder how? What protective factors are at play? So I have a theory. Ride out with me on this one. Trauma responses. In order to maintain survival, Black people have integrated trauma responses into the culture. So much so that we hand it down from generation to generation under the guise of values and traditions. Let's get into it. Let's talk science.
Oh, sorry.
Trauma responses are a physiological reaction in response to a perceived harmful event, a threat, or a threat to survival. A necessary system, it was wired into the human nervous system in order to keep us safe. So if there was a bear in the wild, this system would kick in to maintain survival. While it's necessary, it was never intended to be a long-term solution. The body is not meant to stay in that state of arousal.
Mm-hmm. So I want to know your thoughts before I share the presentation again on the whole idea as to why mental health is taboo. And I really want to get to this before I provide you tools on how to manage any sort of anxieties, low moods, because this is important. In order for us to see any sort of change or really take care of ourselves, we have to understand the barriers that could potentially prevent us from getting to that point. So based on some of those taboo mentions and the video clip here, I want to know if any of you guys relate to any of it. Is anyone open to sharing at all? So Clementine can relate. Yeah. So I'll start. Maybe if I start, you guys will be a little bit more comfortable to talk. Yeah. Likewise, Dr. Anna. So for me, although on paper I'm a mental health professional, I noticed when I was doing my studies that I had all this information about all these different anxiety disorders, all these different conditions, and any little inkling of anxiety or low mood that I could see in myself, I didn't want to pay attention to it. I wanted to ignore it and run away from it and just be like, "Oh, it's not anything." Because I felt like there was a stigma attached to that term, anxiety or depression. And I can share with you is, mental health condition, the mental health condition of anxiety does run in my family generationally, genetically. And so I was fearful of that title or that label being anywhere near me, even though I was learning about it, even though I could understand it cognitively, because I felt, well, if I have any sort of closeness to this title, to this label, then I don't feel like my worth is as good. That's me being very transparent. So is there anyone else that wants to unmute themselves and mention or of how you've related to it? Any of the taboos? No? That's okay. Okay. We'll continue with the presentation. I see some people in the chat though. Let's see. I can relate with the several. I feel like a lot of people don't get, yep. Yeah. Very good. Thank you for sharing, guys. I really appreciate that. And you know what? Another thing too is being vulnerable is really difficult for us because of us feeling the need to stay strong or keep that presentation of a strong Black woman on. But you know what? We don't always have to be strong. We don't always have to feel strong to be strong, I should say, right? Because we're human. We go through life. Some of the things that you guys are doing with your studies and with your careers are very stressful. I remember when I was studying, I'm sure Dr. Anna can attest, it's heavy, right? And so being vulnerable can be a challenge. Now let's go back to so we did that. Okay, so how does all of this affect us as Black women? How does it affect the strong, educated, and Black woman? We often suffer in silence. We go through difficulties. We go through challenges. We may go in a bathroom stall and cry and maybe have a panic attack and no one would ever know. Maybe some of us don't sleep at night because of things that are going on at home in relationships, but we would never tell anybody because it would taint how others see us. So we suffer in silence. We often avoid healing, from deep wounds by immersing ourselves in our careers. So many clients that I have, most of them are Black women, don't realize that they're successful on paper. They have all the titles. They've gone to all the greatest schools. They make great money. Financially, they're not struggling. But inside, they have failed to address those deep wounds, whether it was a relationship with a parent, a sibling that was traumatic, and they hide themselves in their careers and in their day-to-day to not have to think about it. And we also find ourselves having difficulty trusting people, trusting others. So we don't talk about our concerns because we don't trust them. And for a lot of us, it's valid as to why you don't trust people, especially our medical systems, right? There's a lot of oppressive and culturally insensitive individuals who are working within the mental health space. So if somebody doesn't understand your culture or somebody, is just about getting the big bucks or giving you a prescription for medicine, and you don't really feel that level of compassion from them, you're not going to trust them, right? Next, we normalize dysfunctional behavior or maltreatment from other people. So, they always do that, but it's okay because, it's my brother. I've known him for years. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. People pleasing, right? That's normalizing dysfunctional behavior and maltreatment from others. Next, we seek validation from other people before we affirm ourselves. So if we don't get the big plaque, the big certificate, the big degree, if we don't get acknowledgement for that, sometimes we feel bad about ourselves. We question our worth, right? So instead of looking in the mirror or saying to yourself, I'm great, not because I have this title, I'm great because either God made me great, or I'm great because I am who I am and I'm the only person in this world like me, we seek outside validation first. And so when that outside validation doesn't come, we feel like we're worthless. And so this is where a lot of people build depression, or they become depressed, I'm sorry, and sometimes suicidal, because they haven't learned how to affirm themselves first. And lastly, we often continue the cycle of carrying the burdens of others without tending to our own needs holistically. We have a question. Go ahead, Clementine.
Thank you so much. I was thinking about all the things you said and couching it in this African context where you don't represent you, you represent a larger whole always, especially if you want to be the good girl, right? Which is the epitome. It's all what we aspire for. And it will be interesting to know if that resonates with anyone else, because thinking about normalizing behavior is one that comes readily to mind. Like, you don't want to upset the fabric of your family. So it is actually fine. It's totally okay. Like, yes, it's problematic, but no, it's okay. Because you have to play a role in keeping everything together, right?
And that is very heavy, especially if you're in a field or you have a professional career that is heavy in itself. If you're carrying other people's and taking responsibility for other people's emotions, feelings, behaviors, you're adding more weight to your load. That really is not your responsibility, right? You can care and you can love for your family or love for your friends or people around you. But when you start to take on the responsibility for their feelings, for their thoughts, and what they're doing, that adds to you that it's a weight that doesn't need to be there. So having that self-awareness of, how much you make people please can really help you in determining what you want to choose, because it's a choice, to not carry, right? So we talked about, if you guys have identified with any of these things, you can really think about it. Like, do I people please? Do I accept maltreatment from other people just to keep things even keeled? Think about it. So let's talk practical tools. So, to help you manage and heal and be your best self. First, I think it's important that we all understand that self-reflection heeds self-awareness. If you do not take the time to stop, think, and really evaluate where you're at, it's going to be hard to be aware of who you are, what you need, because a lot of times when we get anxious, when we become depressed, it's because there's a need that we have that is not being met. So often that comes over time when things kind of build up. But if we don't take the time to pause for a second, okay, where am I at? How am I actually feeling? You're not going to know. And then you're not going to be able to communicate what you need. Next, avoidance delays ascension. So when we choose to avoid things and not address them, we avoid how much we can elevate within ourselves as women, as professionals, as people, because the things that may be weighing us down or causing us internal turmoil may be taking up space for the new things that we're trying to do for ourselves, right? So for example, if we have a strained parental relationship that we have never actually processed or forgiven, not for the sake of that person or your parent, but for yourself, that can affect how you might receive recognition, or, acknowledge your own efforts. Because it's taking up space. So avoidance, when you keep avoiding it, it delays ascension and change. You will not see change. Next, asking for help does not make you weak or incapable. We've been taught this. Asking for help does not make you weak or incapable. We're all capable. We all have different capacities, though, because we're different people. But we're all capable, but there comes a point where we all need community in some way. We need support. When you have to go to the dentist, do you take care of your cavity, or do your filling, or clean your teeth with those special tools by yourself? No, you go, the dental hygienist comes in and helps you out. Or if you go to see your doctor because your leg is hurting, are you dealing with your leg by yourself? Maybe at first, but there might come a point where you're like, I can't deal with this pain. No matter what I do, you go to the doctor and you get support, right? Most of the time, hopefully. So it's the same thing when we cater to our mental health. But somehow, because of those taboos that we discussed, we feel that when we ask for help when it comes to our mental health, our emotional well-being, it's bad. Like, we've put a bad label on it. Next, your career success will be affected by how healthy you are, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. There's only so much we can fake the funk, as a statement. It's a fake the funk, meaning just put on the facade of being okay, right? So your career will be affected, right? You'll burn out. I'm sure maybe some of you have gone through it. I've gone through burnout. My body was like, no, Aijia, we need to rest. So considering that. Next, you are more than your title. Whether you're a doctor, whether you have a master's degree, whether you have a bachelor's degree, whatever title you have, you as a person, your value is beyond that. It's not just because you have a title. And I think a lot of us seek prestige because we seek validation from our communities, our families. If you're a doctor, if you're an engineer, if you're a scientist, your value is more than if you just sell some goods at the market. But that's not true. And it might be hard to believe that because maybe that's what you've been taught, but your value is more than your title. Okay? Next, choosing to acknowledge your concerns is the first step to experiencing change, which I've mentioned. And the last thing is our minds. Ladies, our minds are so powerful. Our minds are so powerful. The things that you think affect the things that you feel and affect the things that you do. It's like a cycle. So if you don't deal with this, you're not going to deal with this, and it's going to affect your behavior. And it will just keep going in a circle. And you will not see anything different until we break the cycle. Okay, so some of you probably heard the terms generational cycles, all of these things. These are some ways that you can break it. So let's now talk about, before we end, how we can do some of these things. First, schedule time for self-care and practice being present. Right? A lot of us, because we have so much to do on our list, oh my goodness, I have this assignment, I have to finish this project, this deadline, I have to go and pick up this thing for mom. We don't take time for ourselves to improve ourselves, not just getting your nails done, not just doing your hair. These are great things. I did my hair yesterday. But we have to take time also for our emotional well-being, right? Second, develop and cherish safe but meaningful relationships. Why are you friends with that person? Are you married? Are you in a relationship? Why are you with them? Do you feel safe around them? Or are you there just because the family's telling you to get married? I'm challenging, guys. I know I'm challenging. So you want to try to develop safe and meaningful relationships. It will affect your life in a positive way if you do it in a healthy way. Third, seek support from a professional or somebody that you trust. right? It could be a friend, it could be a therapist or a counselor in your neighborhood. It could be a teacher, a pastor if you go to church. Somebody. Just seek support. Community, EFeMS. Dr. Anna shared with us earlier today that this is a community where we can reach out and talk to each other. So let's utilize that resource. Next, journal your thoughts and your feelings. Right? We do live in the 21st century, so if you have a phone, a smartphone, you can use your notes app or something to journal your thoughts and feelings. But this is an opportunity for you to really reflect. Take 10 minutes before you go to sleep, or if you're waiting in the car, or you can think about this. Number 5, think about your fundamental values. Are you making life choices that align with your values? I'll tell you this, most of the people that I see as my clients who have anxiety and just everything is too much is because they're not making decisions that are aligned with the things they say are important to them. So some people say, oh my goodness, I love my family. Family is so important. But they don't see their family because they're at work for 15 hours. So if you value your family, you have to make time for them, right? You can't say that it's something you value, but you're not making choices that are in sync with that. Number 6, consider what you can and you cannot control. The number one leading cause of, or one of the leading causes, of anxiety is when we try to control things that are out of our control, right? Oh, this person said this to me and they didn't do this to me, but you can't control what they do. You can control what you do. You can set the boundaries you might need so that you can maintain your peace, right? So consider, am I trying to control something that I really cannot? This will help. And the last thing is to show yourself grace. Nobody is perfect. It doesn't exist. We all have a different definition of perfection, but I will tell you, perfection is fantasy. There's no such thing, okay? It's subjective. So show yourself grace. You're not going to know everything all at one time. There's no expiry date as to when you need to figure it out. Show yourself grace. Today's best. It may not be yesterday's best. Maybe you had a long day yesterday, so the next day you maybe can't do as much. I'll share, I'm currently expecting a baby. I'm pregnant, and I had to wrestle with myself that my capacity is different, but I had to learn to show myself grace. So I'm going to leave it there. We have some time for questions. I know I said a lot and it felt like it was super fast. So let me see. Yeah, so if you want to unmute, I would love to interact with you guys because right now it's super silent on my end. I would love to hear you. I'd love to hear your thoughts and anything you may have taken away.
Thank you so much, Aijia. I think it was just such a time of reflection personally for me, specifically because there's so many things, being an African woman or a Black woman that aren't spoken about at all. And I know growing up, like we don't talk about these things. Like growing up, or my parents are always like, don't share your business with anyone else, right? Because you don't want people to look at you differently or look down on you or sense like weakness in you. And so I'm glad that like our generation now, we're actually speaking about these things and we're comfortable with it. And we kind of want to change that norm. So thank you so much for just giving us all these tips and bringing all of this to light. Like Aijia said, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. But as we're waiting, there are some questions that came in our registration form. We had a section if anyone had questions. And so I guess while we're waiting, I can read some out. So someone said, I work to sponsor myself through school, and it's not in my current field of study. Combining it with school is hard. I barely have any time to even rest well, and it is beginning to affect me mentally. Is there such a thing as balance? Because I'm struggling to combine work and study.
That's a really good question. So I'll tell you my opinion, and based on the research I've done with the individuals I've talked to and clients that I see, I don't think there's such thing as perfect balance. But what I do think we can do is identify our priorities, right? So our priorities might be school and work and family, but maybe on this week I gotta prioritize school because I have an upcoming assignment that's due, so I have to do it, right? Or maybe in a different season of life, it might be family. So I think there is no such thing as a perfect balance, but I do think you need to identify what are your priorities. Try to organize yourself the best you can, right? There are apps if you have smartphone, or if you are a person that's creative and likes to make your own schedules, you can create a schedule so that you can try to manage your time based on your priorities.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So another question that came in was, how do you cope with microaggression and bullying at work, especially if you're the only Black employee?
Wow, that's so common, especially in North American and Western world for sure. How do you cope with microaggressions? I think that standing in your own empowerment and the boundary setting of knowing what's okay and what's not okay for you is not being rude, right? So if someone says, like a lot of people, I live in Canada, by the way, in Toronto. So someone be like, oh, you changed your hair. It was different yesterday. You look really good when it's straight, which means when it's natural, it's not as good. That's a microaggression. So you can acknowledge the compliment and say, I appreciate that you appreciate my hair being different. However, that comment does, allude to my hair only being good when it's a certain way. Because honestly, I personally believe that holding people accountable is important too. And you don't have to be rude or mean, but you can be honest. There is a difference. So I would say be honest, identify what your boundaries are, and you can choose to hold the people around you accountable in a respectful way.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that always throws people off when you kind of confront what
It
they
does.
say.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That's all right. But when we don't say anything, guys, that's us falling under the oppression that we talked about, the colonial oppression that I discussed. When we just keep silent, that's kind of what the expectation is.
Mm. Okay, awesome. Anyone here have questions? This is your
Yes.
opportunity. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have a comment, not a question. So thank you very much for organizing this, Dr. Anna, and thank you, Aijia, for being the guest speaker of today's series. This is my first time joining, and I'm very, very happy that I joined. In regards to the calling them to account, I think it's very, very important. And as Black women, we don't have to feel ashamed of speaking up. When I was growing up, I'm from Nigeria, and I currently live in Ghana. So when I was growing up in Nigeria, there's this sentence, I think it's a phrase or a sentence in my Catholic school where they always say silence is golden. So as I was growing up, I mean, that really was part of me. Like when people are talking foolishly, just keep quiet. Like the best answer for a fool is to keep quiet. So by the time you keep quiet, they will leave you alone. But in these days and age, I think keeping quiet, it depends on the context. To me,
Yes.
I always tell my children, silence is no more golden. It's golden depending on the context, depending on the situation you find yourself. So for example, the example you gave us about your hair, I think the best thing is to comment and respond to the person with respect, so that next time they know that this person has boundaries, they dare not ask you questions that are demeaning or that are foolish. Because the more we keep quiet because we are Black, the more they continue the microaggression, and they'll just start throwing things at us. And by the time we want to speak up, it will be too late.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very good observation that you made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, I agree. And I also, in my experience anyhow, a lot of people are very, very unaware. A lot of people are ignorant, not in the sense of their intellectual capabilities, but they're just ignorant to what microaggressions are. They don't even know that's what they're doing. And again, a lot of us do what we have been taught, right? So if somebody is not Black and they kind of grew up in a household where they've heard certain comments, they've heard certain things, to them it's just normal and it's okay, until somebody like one of us maybe, says, you know what, that's actually not okay. Maybe, and it might make them think. And it's not our responsibility to take on that person's emotions. We can, again, be respectful, but be honest and stand in your empowerment as a Black woman and recognize that certain things are not okay. And I know that it can be difficult because of the systems that we're a part of, right? The workforces, you may not have a manager or, a person in your department that is actually encouraging or supporting you. And that can be really difficult to want to say something because you don't want to lose your job, or you don't want your department to look at you differently. But this goes back to affirming yourself, that you're not just speaking up for the sake of speaking up to be rude. There's purpose behind it. Somebody says, I think the harder part is if the comment is from a fellow Black person. Interesting. This is true. How have you guys navigated that? Have you experienced that?
Many times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, again, because we're all, silence is golden, that has become an old age nowadays. Yeah. So my husband is Congolese and I am multi-ethnic. I'm West Indian and Nova Scotian, so I have a little bit of different things. And Guyanese, which is South American. So when my family was integrating and learning to understand my husband's culture, when we were doing our premarital traditional things and stuff like that, there was a lot they had to learn. And I'm speaking to the comment about some comments being made from other Black people. So although I'm Black, my family is Black, our cultures are a little bit different, right? So some of the older people in my family didn't understand certain things. So some things were said were a little bit, offensive sometimes, and I had to address it. But sometimes these things can happen when the other Black person is especially just not from your culture and they don't understand certain things. That can make things difficult. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Clementine, I see she has her hand raised.
Oh, okay.
I'm so glad at the discussion, honestly, especially the comment about how with other Black people, sometimes you can have those microaggressions.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, in handling it, one of the ways I choose to is reaffirming who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to assert myself because I know I struggle with that self-assertion. But also it is a way to respond with like a positive retort. So in thinking about a comment made about hair, I can say, well, I like me with all my different hairstyles because it's not the hairstyle, it's me.
Yes.
I'm the one that is wearing it. And in all states, I am beautiful.
Yes.
It kind of stops people because they might either be expecting a retort and then they want to be defensive, or they might be expecting you just to clam up. But when you stand up with pride, it almost feels like, what do I do with this? And also, it reminds yourself that instead of letting that last voice of negativity start to grow a seed in the fertile soil that is our beautiful minds,
Yeah.
we kick out that seed and replant our own loving one and flourish it and cultivate it, so that the last thing I'm hearing in my mind from that interaction is my voice. It sounds very like me in the mirror, but that's the level of growth we're in.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
we
so
do.
beautiful. That is so beautiful. It's making me think and say, you know what? Yes, I love that you use the analogy of the seed, because our minds are a ground of soil, and everything that we do in our life stems from what's inside of our minds. And so, the whole idea of being self-assertive and being just empowered in your own opinions and validating yourself and affirming yourself before anyone else can do that, allows us to live a life of peace. And I'm pretty sure every woman here wants peace. We don't want turmoil. So um, these are ways, as Clementine is saying, to cater to your mental health. It's not just about going to the nail salon, getting your makeup done, your hair done. Those are all great things. I'm sure some of us love that, but self-care is exactly what Clementine said. So thank you.
Yeah, this is such a good discussion. And as much as I want to continue, I know that Asia, you have a hard stop at 10. So we're just going to end it for today. But thank you so, so much for coming and
Thank you so
speaking to
much.
us. I appreciate it. I'm sure all of you do. So if you wouldn't mind just showing Asia some love in the chat. And I know
Thank
you're
you.
available by social media if you want to just
Yes, I'll
maybe
show
put your
you.
social media in the chat as well, so that people can. Yeah, so there's her IG, her email, her website. If you have follow-up questions, actually, let me not speak for you, but
Go ahead. It's okay.
okay, if you have follow-up questions, I'm sure she wouldn't mind answering them either
Yep.
by IG or email. But
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for coming here and
Thank
talking
you
to
for
us
having me,
about mental
everyone.
health.
Thank you for having me. You guys have a great Easter weekend, and please take good care of yourselves. All right.
All
Thank
right,
you, Dr. Anna.
bye.